patients. I'm also the first community advocate for SWOG Network. It's a organization, it's a global organization where they focus on research and clinical trials. Before they're out in the public, I get to advocate for women like myself. In addition to that, I am a graduate student at Teachers College, Cullum University, where I'm pursuing a degree in health education. I should be done in May. And on the personal side, I'm a wife and mom to 3 girls. At the time of my diagnosis, they were just 2, 4, and 9 years old, but I'm really excited because now they're 13, 15, and 20. So I've had the great pleasure of seeing them grow up, which was something I was really afraid of. And I am also a New Yorker. I live and work in the community that I serve. So that means I never stop working. I go to the supermarket and I run into patients. I go to drop the girls off at school. I run into patients and other survivors. So it's really beautiful. And this community is largely immigrant. And so I also speak Spanish. And so I'm able to communicate with our patients in their native language, at least those that speak Spanish. And like Jean said, I am a stage 2 triple negative breast cancer diagnosed in September of 2008. So for those that don't know what a patient navigator is, I mean, essentially it's just somebody that assists patients in the community. I always advocate on behalf of the caregivers as well and their families, because I think that they're that forgotten group in healthcare that have a big brunt of the diagnosis burden on them, but they often are not recognized. And I love that Young Survival Coalition has an entire community just of co-survivors, which I think is a beautiful thing. And so really, where did my advocacy work and my focus come from? It really started because of the foods that I was being offered at the chemo infusion center, which was highly processed, sugar, soda, cookies. And it was just something that was really eye-opening. And I found it to be really ironic that this is what they were giving patients that they were trying to heal. Let's see. So, and this is what it looks like in the inpatient setting. This is just general Google searches, but this is truly, as we all likely know, the food that they serve us in the hospital setting. And then even as you're walking through the halls, you have vending machines full of junk food. Now they have like a walking vending machine where people walk around with rolling carts to waiting rooms and they're bringing the junk to you in a cart. And so unfortunately, like when you get back home, a lot of us tend to eat a lot of highly processed food. And so that really started that journey for me of how do I work on healing myself when I'm outside of the hospital setting? And so yeah, so that I can go on and on about all the training I've done, but none of that really matters. What is that food is a huge part of our healing process. I think it's extremely empowering. Like the doctors can prescribe surgery and chemotherapy and all that in the hospital setting, but then we have a lot of work we can do at home, and we are equally collaborating in this healing effort. And so, yeah, so one of the games that I play with a lot of the people that I interact with, abuelita is the word for grandmother in Spanish. And so I try to tell them, I think for those of us that are younger survivors, we would have to say maybe our great grandmothers at this point. But yeah, so when you show them food and you say like, would they know what like a bag of Skittles or McDonald's, like this is not the things that they grew up on. And so I really try to make it more visual so that they can identify with the things. And the question is well, do they recognize what that is? And if they don't, then maybe we should not be eating it. And that doesn't matter what ethnicity, what racial, religion, whatever it is that you practice, whatever your great grandmother or your grandmother ate is really what you should be eating too. I also like to borrow a lot of things from other cultures. And when I was doing my, my food journey, where I went to culinary school and I did a program in food therapy and a holistic nutrition course, I learned a lot about the healing foods from other cultures. For those of you that do like random Google searches, it's just so oversaturated. And so I went into, the kitchen and I borrowed from so many cultures. And these are just some examples of some of those foods. There's like matcha green tea, which is incredibly cancer beneficial for reducing your risk for cancer. There's cruciferous vegetables. There's coconuts, and coconut water is actually given in the infusion center in Cuba. And that was something I found extremely interesting. Mushrooms, sea vegetables. Sea vegetables are actually really, really good with the heavy metal toxins that are in the chemotherapy cocktails. And so those are the things that can draw those heavy metals out of our bodies. And anyway, I can go on, but turmeric is like famous in our world. We all, it's funny because when I talk about turmeric, everyone starts to show me their orange nails because they consume it so much that I think we're all turning into like Willy Wonka Oompa Loompas. And so I wanted to highlight some of the things that I just came, obviously last month was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And there was so much information. I go to a lot of conferences. I do a lot of speaking engagements. And at the Society of Integrative Oncology, they presented some new fitness guidelines for cancer survivors specifically. Before, the guidelines that we were actually given were the same as everyone else. And I think we're a unique group. And so now they've actually changed it so that they are asking survivors to perform aerobic and resistance exercise. And speaking as a person that's 11 years out of treatment, I have a lot of body aches. And so resistance training is the add-on. And they're actually saying that you should do it 2 to 3 times a week. Oops, I keep going to the arrow buttons when I should go here. Okay, so another huge passion of mine is integrative medicine. And as you can see here, over the years, it's actually increased substantially. And the last data we have is from 2011, but you can see every single year it increases by more. And patients are really, really asking for this. And the reasons why integrative therapies are showing up in hospital 85% of the time is because we are demanding it. And I can speak from my personal experience. My oncologist first said to me, like, why are you doing acupuncture? There's no science behind it. And just this year, fast forward 11 years later, she did a whole talk. She was the keynote speaker. She was talking about the benefits of acupuncture, specifically for side effects and pain as a result of cancer treatment. And so I thought that was really awesome to see her on that stage saying something that 11 years ago, she wasn't truly a believer. And so what is integrative oncology? So there's a lot of things and there's confusion around what is integrative oncology. And so for those of us that are on the front lines, I have a hard time advocating for it because some of the doctors feel that it's replacing conventional treatment, which is surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. And what I try to explain is like if you go home and you make a healthy meal, or you meditate in the morning just to calm your anxiety, or you sleep, or there's just so much out there that you can do to support yourself. And so all of that falls within the realm of integrative oncology, which is really a patient-centered, evidence-informed field of cancer care that utilizes the mind, body practices, and natural products. And natural products is a place that I actually take a lot of issue with because all these supplements are not really well regulated. And so we have to be really careful. And I can tell you, working in the front lines, like people open up their bags and it's just loaded with pills. And so a lot of my work has been advocating for what I call food therapy, which is getting in the kitchen, using really healing spices, fruits and vegetables, colorful berries, and seasonal food. And I've even done a farm residency where I stay there for a week. And so those are the things that I'm talking about. The supplements, I struggle with a little bit. And so, yeah, and so here I've actually included a couple of resources that I think would be really beneficial. And there's an organization called Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies, where they brought in some of the biggest names in integrative cancer care, where you can get vetted information, and it's not just something that you find in almost dangerous information that's on the internet. And so this is, if you're interested in that, that's, it's www.bcct.org. And then Memorial Sloan Kettering has an About Herbs database, which talks about the contraindications of some of the supplements that we could take, but that they may not be the best for us. And in some cases, they're totally fine, but that's a good resource for you to be able to figure out what's what. And so the whole theme of today is about how do we get ready, get set, and get this self-care happening. And so this is actually a picture of my wellness program and some of my participants. And I really love the accountability piece of what we do, particularly like when we go out into the world, we're like 1 out of a million people. We're just ourselves, and everyone, sort of either does the, oh man, you had cancer thing, and they feel sorry for you and the whole pity party. But I felt like when we had this wellness program, it's like cancer lost its power because you you know, there was a woman that she was like, oh, I'm so upset, I have cancer. And then everybody was like, so did we, like, and it instantly lost its power. And so this is what I love so much about Young Survival Coalition, where they have all these groups, and it's really based on who you are, whether it's your ethnicity or your sexual orientation or whatever place you are, whether you're a co-survivor. And so I love that. And so, you know, again, in the theme of tonight, it's about finding that partner and how are you going to actually do this, right? Like, we can all talk about it, we can meditate on it, but really I think when it comes to things like when people like often say like, oh, I'm giving it to God, which is a beautiful thing to say. However, I say I pray with my feet, so I give it to God, but then I go out and I do the work. And so really what we need is somebody to hold us accountable. And so these beautiful women, and you can, if you, I purposely made it really light, but in that picture are husbands, our wives, our children, and all of these people, and even volunteers. And so all of these people were such a big part of everything that we did. And so, yeah, so we can talk a little bit more. I want to answer your questions now. And so that's my information. You can find me pretty much everywhere. And so, yeah, thank you so much. That was all I have to say.
Thank you, Eileen. If you want to leave that slide up for just a little bit, so if people want to like take a picture of it or just make sure they jot it down. We do have a couple of questions, and one that came in asked, what motivated you to do this work in health education and healthcare activism? And I know that you've touched on it a little bit, but could you say a little bit more about that?
I just remember being totally lost, especially being so young. I mean, when we walk into these situations, it's generally a larger population, although I do have to say, unfortunately, that it's changing. But I felt like I was the only person that could identify with myself. And so I remember walking into a support group about a week after I was diagnosed, and everyone was older than 60 years old, and everyone was crying. And I just felt like I got to the door and I just turned around and went back home. I just could not walk into that. And so I feel like a lot of it was about doom and gloom or fake happiness. There was like nowhere in the middle. And specifically for those women with less resources, I think they needed somebody, I wouldn't say that they were voiceless, but I think that they needed somebody to amplify what they were already saying. You know, a lot of people don't listen to what others have to say. And so I felt that I needed to amplify that, being in the waiting room, translating for people who couldn't speak English. And just because I was very well versed in healthcare, I felt like I was sitting there in the waiting room, filling out forms and going into the consultations with them to say, and this is just as a patient, like now I do it as a job. Mm-hmm. But I say that I've been actually doing this since I was about 8 or 10 years. This is 3 times out of the week. And so she didn't speak English, and I would go to the very same hospital where I work and was treated, and as a child, and I would, you know, be the translator between her and the medical staff. And so that's really where my work started.
You mentioned that 8 to 10 year span, and I'm curious about, you know, the place where you started, where you were the youngest person in the support group, and the messaging was not helpful. Have you met others like you who are doing maybe not the exact same thing, but something in this lane to help change the messaging and to help people broaden the perspective of what's available to them?
I mean, fortunately, yes. I say fortunately and unfortunately, because I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of us out there now. But fortunately, I think we're using the tools that we've been given, and social media is a big part of that. And I think finding our tribes within that very cluttered world, I think it's helping to, again, amplify that, because I mean, I can't tell you how many accounts on Instagram I follow and Twitter that are specifically with young women. And even at work, like as soon as somebody is under 40 years old, I mean, it just goes without saying. It's like I'm like the little Pied Piper in the hospital for women that are younger, because we have the same kinds of issues. Either we have young children, or we were just married, or we were, you know, some women are dating. And so I think that we're using these tools. And I mean, even what I see here, like I said, I went on the website and I saw familiar faces of different events that I've attended or people that went to my wellness program are actually on your website. And so I think people are being more honest, which is something that I appreciate, because again, it's either the extreme happy, like, you know, like everyone with the pink and all that other stuff, or it's like doom and gloom. And so I think we're finding our place in this, and our needs are being more met. And I think we're being better listened to.
Thank you. Here's another question. For those who are in post-treatment, and when I say post-treatment, I'm thinking about that year to year and a half that people spend in some formula of chemo, radiation, surgery, and whatever else might be involved. And then the doctor says, you don't need to come back for 3 months. How do you manage, this is the part of the question, how do you manage scanxiety or the PTSD around the aches and pains that come with having been diagnosed?
That's a really, really, really rough patch. It's a really rough patch. I think that's when we have to get those people that, if we're blessed to have even one person to connect with, I think that's where it's, I mean, you spend a lot of time walking people off the ledge, because anxiety is very real. It's something that I think, you know, I personally was using prayer and meditation. As I went in there, I just would do my breathing exercises, and I was very well known in the hospital during that period, even though I was not an employee, because I was coming in and, you know, rubbing aromatherapy oils and breathing exercise. And I mean, I think that was what was my thing. It isn't everybody's thing, but that was mine. And so I think journaling is actually something that really helped me figure out who I was in this. And when I go back to those entries, even 11 years out, I was going through it with a friend of mine in preparation for this talk. And so many of the things that I put on those pages are things that I'm actually doing today. And that's not just on a professional level, like on a personal level. I always wanted to go to, you know, Columbia University. I grew up looking at it. And so I put that there, and, you know, fast forward, and it's nice to see my evolution over time and what I've done. And I think journaling is, and was something that really was helpful to me, and writing about those feelings. And when patients tell me at work, like, oh my God, I'm, you know, first of all, I feel so blessed to be in that room, because I always said, if I could make this better, I would find somebody who has gone through it to be available for me. And so I can't believe that this is actually my career. It is a whole different career than what I had before. And so I think, you know, I ask patients, can we put this in writing? Let's put in writing what you're feeling. Let's work through them. I'm not going to tell you that they're right or wrong. They're your feelings. It's not for me to tell you what way to go with them. But I think writing it and then using it as a reflection point to, in many cases, most cases, we go and have those scans and we come back and everything is fine. And so being able to look at that, for those that are fortunate to have that outcome, is actually something very refreshing. And over time, I think, as weird as it sounds, we become more used to it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Here's another question. Everyone expects me to feel happy and relieved now that treatment is over. I find that I'm actually more anxious and emotional now. Is that normal? How do I bounce back?
It is 100% normal. And in my experience, it's super common. So whoever it is that's asking that question, I just want you to know that you're so not alone. There's so many people that feel that. And so I think you will bounce back, right? First of all, you will bounce back, because you're human, right? A robot will go through something that traumatic and not feel anything. A human has to feel those feelings. And unfortunately, I think our families and friends who are so well-intentioned actually are telling us, you know, you have to stay positive. It's all in the mind. You know, let's not think about it. Let's distract ourselves. But I'll often jump in and say, like, let this person have their feeling. You know, it's different if you're sitting and you're completely consumed. You're not eating, you're not sleeping. Then you probably need some psychosocial support, right? But in most cases, this is something that we're all dealing with, and that we all have to just feel those feelings. And then we go and we find something else to do, because unfortunately for many of us, life is super busy. But that's super duper 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 common. And I mean, at least you feel like a friend of mine was telling me just yesterday that she felt so much more comfortable in the chair because she knew that the infusion drugs were actually killing her cancer. And that now that she's not sitting in that chair, she constantly feels like she has cancer because she's not doing anything. So one of the things that I can do as somebody that is, so well educated on food and the therapies of food, I said, all right, then let's get another liquid in your body that's going to do the same thing. And so that's what we did. That's not everyone's solution, but that was the one that I offered her. And now she's becoming, like, oh my God, give me the recipe. Now I want to do this every day. I need this liquid.
Okay, here's another question. My metabolism feels like it's totally different since my diagnosis and treatment. I've tried everything and I keep gaining weight because of my medication.
So that's another thing that's really common. I mean, we've all seen probably those really morbid movies where the person is thin and skinny and throwing up. And so for most people, we actually gain weight. I was one of those that lost 40 pounds because I used to throw up so much. But I can tell you, as soon as that treatment phase was over, my weight just shot up. And it's something that I still struggle with. And I think I eat really healthy and I still struggle with it. So I think for somebody that is struggling, I mean, I think, and as frustrating as it is, I think there's a lot of new normals that happen. One for me is body aches. I have excruciating pain, especially in the morning. But I think one of the things that I did is that I moved to a place where I can walk to work. And I walk back and forth. And I find not only walking is something that isn't like bad on my joints, it doesn't do a lot of damage. It also allows me to reflect. And so when we're doing like resistance exercise, if we're using those new guidelines that we've been given, I mean, we can use bands, we can use light weights, we can even use body weight exercises. And I think that there's a lot of props that we can use even in the world of yoga. They give us straps and blocks and different stretches. There's this one girl that I used to follow. I did a 30-day like yoga. I think her name is Adrienne, and it was 30 days of yoga, 20 minutes a day. And I found that to be so, so helpful. And so I don't know if it's going to help you to lose weight because again, everybody is different. And speaking for myself, I have not figured out what the secret sauce is for that. But I think that movement is going to make you feel better. And then once you feel better, then you'll be able to move more. And then I think once you're able to move more, then you're able to get in the kitchen and start to prepare healthier meals. I mean, I think we have to think about how these negative feelings and the sadness results in us eating like junk food or junky food or sugar or alcohol. Like there's all these different things. And I think that starting gently and being patient with yourself, I mean, your body has gone through a lot. And I think that we are so much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And I think even in the healthcare setting, there are some doctors that will say, well, you look fine. You don't need to lose weight. But, but I see there's any cookies and stuff in the waiting room. And I'm like, even if they're thin, it doesn't mean that they're eating the right foods. And so we have to really know what it feels like to feel good inside. And just know that I think there are concerns. I mean, there's weight management options. So you can ask for referrals at your doctor's office. And there's a lot of research actually being done specifically by endocrinologists for cancer survivors. And so you can ask to see an endocrinologist and see if there's something that they can do to help you when you know that you're doing at least what you feel is the right thing and you're not getting the results you want. And so I think, ask for a referral. There are a lot of different free programs out there, a lot of apps, and it just depends on the kind of exercise you like.
I mean, it could be too, you mentioned Adrienne, and I know who that is. She's on YouTube. And so I'm wondering if you would agree with things like not just doing anything you find on YouTube, but looking for gentle entries into being able to find a practice, because a lot of what you've been describing in your life is something that became a practice and is something, whatever is still working, you're still doing. And maybe you haven't needed all of what you did, but whatever is still a part is something that you find helpful now. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And I actually had a calendar. I mean, I've always been up and down with exercise, but I felt like I almost owed this person, like, I'm like, it's just 30 days. And so I had a big calendar where I would cross off every day. And in between there, when I was really sore, I would get acupuncture and it would allow me to do better the next day. So I think, yeah, absolutely not anything on YouTube, but it is something you like. If it's walking and yoga, if it's a marathon or not a marathon, I would say like a 5K, you can prepare for that. There's an app that it's called 5K, and you do more walking week 1, then it gets a little more difficult the following week. And so there are things out there. I think we have to figure out what it is that we like. It's like ice cream. You have to figure out the flavor you like.
Let's see. The next question is, I have metastatic breast cancer and keep changing treatments. So it feels like I'm always dealing with new side effects. What can I do?
Again, that's a hard question, because it's like, I feel like once you get in this setting, when you get used to something, it comes and it switches everything up on you just when you feel like you're in a good rhythm. And so I think what we're going to have to do is just constantly change up. As the medications change, then we have to then change, because there's a lot of things that we cannot do, and a lot of things could be dangerous, right? So like these high impact sports could do damage in that setting. And so again, we stretching, for me, I'm most people, because I'm so interested in integrative therapies, people figure that I'm like this yogi that I am not, and that's not. I did this 30-day yoga thing and then I've not done yoga again. So I think as the medications change, I think oncology massage is also a very good thing, but somebody has to be certified, and that's a subspecialty that is not that common. And so I think that is really beneficial. There's also, at least in the setting of integrative therapies, there's Reiki, where there's somebody just not even really deeply massaging your muscles, but sometimes there's not even touch. And so for me, that was something that I found to be beneficial when I was in the trenches of chemotherapy, where I had I would have 4 and 5 nosebleeds a day. I would throw up 4 and 5 times a day, which is why I lost all that weight. And so, yeah, I think, again, we have to just keep trying things. As the doctors try different things on us, then we have to try different things on ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Our next question is, speaking of junk food, my husband isn't taking care of himself, and the word diet is in parentheses, because he's so focused on me. Can you share how you made sure your husband was taking care of himself after your diagnosis?
My husband was not taking care of himself at all. Actually, my husband started taking high blood pressure medication when I started going through treatment, and he's never stopped, and that's 11 years. And so it was, for me, like, I sit in on new patient consultations several times a day, and I don't cry I don't cry so much when the patient is having a breakdown, because I can identify with that feeling. But when I see the husband falling apart, I need to excuse myself, because I relive that experience again. And so, yeah, it's hard, right? I think it was easier to get my kids to take care of themselves than it was for him, because again, everybody is so focused on the patient that everyone forgets about the husband. And so one of the things that I did like was that I would say, like, let's go for a walk. Maybe diet is what is bringing him peace, right? Like, if it's eating junk food, that might be his peace. But maybe you can go for a walk together, or say, like, let's walk and talk this through, Yeah, but men are very, very, like, they want to feel like they're protecting you, and they're kind of helpless in this situation, because there's not much they can do that they want to do, right? They want to take this away, and they have to be patient. And I think when you finish treatment, then it's time to sit down and really think of a family plan. But it's weird, because again, we go to the future. Like, when I was in that period of my life, it was very, very hard. But if we fast forward to the future, it's like, now I only buy certain foods in my house, or we go to the farmer's market. And so when all his friends are going to, like, McDonald's for lunch, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe they're eating that stuff, because he's so used to not eating that in the home that it feels like he feels sick when he's eating it. But again, this is way after treatment. while you're in that phase, it's hard because they also have a lot on their plate and they don't have time to meal prep and do all these things that we would love for them to do. But I think our job is, as their wife, is to remind them how much we care about them and how much we need them. And if there's kids involved, then, you know, we can't have two people sick in the house. We need one person to be strong until the other person catches up.
Yeah. This is the next question. There's a little bit of context and then a question.
Okay.
I was recently diagnosed and I'm having trouble with spending too much focus and energy on whether or not I am always, quote, maximizing my outcome, quote, at every moment of every day. It feels like each moment that my mind is not positive or my body is not being exercised or I am not eating 100% healthy is a place for my mind to jump in and remind myself that I could be doing more to ensure my own survival. It's so much pressure. Any advice?
I think, so one of the things I think you should do is actually look and see if your insurance company offers a therapist, right? And I think all of our insurance companies do, if we're lucky to have good insurance, because I think that this is a really good time to work through those feelings, because I think that this is going to be something that's not going to go away right away. I think, you know, some people need distraction while other people need quiet. And so if you can work with a mental health professional through this, this is going to take, that's a skill that it's going to take you beyond just this diagnosis. That's one. And then for two, this is where I think, like, if you belong to a spiritual community where they can come in and help you with the distraction, or if you belong to a group of people with similar interests where they can come in and help you to cultivate those skills, right? So I know somebody that just was always interested in sewing, but she didn't have the time. And so whenever she would get scared, she would start doing it. And now she's doing amazing work. She's done, Fashion Week and all this other stuff. And it all started at that time because she could not have any quiet time or she would just get really anxious. And so if there is a way that you can find something that you've always wanted to do, and see how you can go about doing it. For me, it was taking all these different classes and all these things about food and cooking and nutrition, and also, just practicing with quiet, right? One day you can do 2 or 3 minutes of a quiet meditation, and I use an app that just has a bell that rings at a certain time. And then there's one about social justice where it's a guided meditation. And so I listen to someone because, again, when I get quiet, I get anxious. So you can do a guided meditation, and it doesn't have to be people want to start with meditation at the 1 hour mark. For me, it was 1 or 2 minutes. And now I can say that at my job, they offer it for 30 minutes and there's 3 people in the room and I'm one of them. And I can do the 30 minutes. And, now I'm falling asleep instead of thinking doom and gloom. And so yeah. So, I think tapping into something, I'm sure that there's, I think we, especially being young, we think we're mortal, and then this happens and our whole world gets turned upside down. But I think a lot of us have dreams and wishes of things that we could do if we didn't have if we had all the time in the world aside our families or our jobs. And so if there's something that's sort of whispering to you, this is something that you've always wanted to do, just kind of play with it. Get curious, look and see if there's any class that you could take, on whatever it is that may interest you. And then also meditation, see if you can do a minute or 2, or if you need guided meditation. Those are things I think that would help.
Great. So there are 3 more questions before we wrap up, and there are 2 that I think you could answer at the same time. One person said they're busy, and so what is a starting place to cooking healthier meals? And the other one is about the keto diet, that my husband started the keto diet and going to the gym twice a day. Now that I'm out of treatment, he wants me to join in these movements, but I'm just not there mentally. Is the keto diet safe for someone post-treatment? So keto diet post-treatment safe, and how do I start off cooking healthier meals?
Okay, so we'll start off with the starting off healthier meals. So I think a lot of our power is taken away when we have this disease, right? They're saying we have to take your breast, we have to take, you can't go to work, or, and so what I talk to people about is not thinking of what you have to take away. There's all this stuff: dairy, meat, fried foods, processed foods. Yes, they should actually be reduced, right? But what I tell people is to what can you add in, right? So let's not even think about what you have to take away. So if you can add in, like, pre-packaged things, like a handful of greens. And, in my world, I say cruciferous greens. So that would be things like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, watercress. And so if you can just take a handful of those, right? And then you add a good fat, olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, salt, pepper, that's it, and then you have these greens that you're adding into whatever it is that you were going to eat anyway, without judgment. And then berries, right? So you can grab blueberries, strawberry, preferably organic when it comes to berries. There's not much cooking there. It's just about what you're adding in, as a snack. Nuts, seeds, that's it. So there's less cooking, right? And then once you do want to start cooking, when you want to get a little, more advanced to the next step, a quick steam is all you need, right? So with those tough greens like kale or sensitive greens like spinach, all you need is like not even 30 seconds, like a little bit of water, salt, pepper, boom, you're done, right? And so you don't have to be a chef, especially not on day one. And then the keto diet. So there are some studies that are coming out actually about the benefits of the keto diet, specifically for cancer and prevention or risk reduction. And I will say this: all this meat and dairy is not probably in our best interest. What I do like about the keto diets are all the vegetables that are included in that, that I think are really beneficial. So the good fats and the vegetables are great. Where I have some issues, like all this like overabundance of bacon and meat and stuff. And I think that these are very inflammatory foods. And so while, I think that this is something that is still being researched. And so we can't really say it's very new when there's a lot of studies for people with neurological disorders where it actually is beneficial. And I can tell you at the hospital where I work, they have actually some really good studies on that. But for cancer, we're just not where we need to be yet. So yeah, I think if you're eating a meal of a lot of fast foods and stuff like that, then the keto diet might be something that's beneficial to you, because at least you're eating at home, you're preparing your meals, you're sort of getting your mind ready for when you evolve to the next step. And I think one of the foods that is actually where there's tons of evidence that leads to long life, it's beans and legumes. And you can't have those things on the keto diet. And so, colon cancer risk reduction is drastically reduced when you add all these beans to your diet, and you can't have that on the keto diet. And so that's where I have some issues with that. But I think, if it's making you eat more fruits and vegetables, then go for it. And then when the studies show that, I think we're going to get there where we do have studies that are showing that it's beneficial. Just think about how much meat you have, and you should be okay.
Okay, so some more questions have come in. Where can I get integrative services or find resources for things like nutrition, massage, or meditation?
So that's a hard one, right? Because insurance doesn't cover everything as it should, especially not in this world. And I think there's a lot of first of all, calling your insurance and finding out what kind of benefit coverage you have for something like acupuncture, right? Because acupuncture can be, some insurance companies are using it to show pain reduction. And so I think that that's a question you can even look at one of the acupuncture offices or any of those types of services in your own community and call and find out. There are also a lot of organizations, a lot of nonprofit organizations in different states. I know New York of some, but New York has a lot of things because there's just a lot of people. And so you can see if there's any nonprofits in your community. There's things like they offer like community acupuncture, where instead of having a private room, you're in a setting where there's 20 people having the treatment at the same time. And the way that I got oncology massage was actually through one of the moms that was getting certified in oncology massage and needed hours in order to get her certificate. And so if you go to call an acupuncture school or a massage therapy school, there are students that do need hours in order to get their full certification. And so you can go to those places, and then they can offer those services either free or reduced cost because there's a benefit for them. Mm-hmm. What other kind of integrative therapies are there? So meditation is always free, right? But I think if you're looking for something that's more hands-on, and again, there's also Reiki clinics that you can go. Sometimes they offer them at churches, and there was like a church, I don't even know what denomination it was, and I wasn't a member of the church, and I would just go there on Wednesdays and have that kind of, and just participate in that service. And then that was it. And then I would go home and they would try to recruit me and I would say no, and I'd come back the next Wednesday. So that's hard. But I think the first place to start is right in your own community. And some people just want to help you, right? And so if they know your story, and they just might want to help you, because honestly, that's the way that I even got introduced to this world. All of the stuff that I took part in was really people that just wanted to help me, who didn't even really know me.
These next two questions are related. They're about the holidays. My family holiday dishes are all about cheese and meat. I'm too exhausted to cook, so what should I do going into the holiday season? That's one. This is the first holiday since my recurrence, and I'm already anxious about all the social gatherings. How do I prepare to help with the stress of dealing with extended family and all of the activities?
I think we all have to prepare for our extended families in this setting, no matter where we are in life. But I will say this, I think we put a lot of extra pressure on ourselves, and sometimes we just sort of have to loosen up a little and know that we're very lucky to still be here, right? Given the circumstances. And so if you have a meal with your family during the holidays, I think that that's a beautiful and very healing experience, and not think so much about what kind of chaos could be happening in your body, because that's probably incorrect. By you having a meal, 2 or 3 meals during the holidays, I think, it's not going to cause this major damage. But another thing that you can do is if you're going to a setting where it isn't like a sit-down meeting with your entire family, you can eat before you go. And so at least your tummy is fuller, and so you consume less of those things. Prepare your food at home, eat it, and then go to wherever it is, this holiday gathering. But I think more than anything, I think there's so much pressure on us, and there's just such a healing opportunity to sit with the people that we love and share a meal together. It is something that, like, I feel like we don't do anymore. We're all on our phones, we're all at work. And I think like sitting around gathering and not even thinking about the dairy and the meat and all this other stuff is just one of the most beautiful things that you can do, because you're just having an intimate moment with people that you love. And so that's the time to do it. It's the holidays. Before you know it, you blink and it's over, right? And so I think that there's something about being present in that moment and not overthinking it. Even though our minds are going to do what they do, that's, it's a protective mechanism of our minds. But then just kind of remembering, like, just look around and just be grateful for the people that you want.
Here's another question. Ever since my diagnosis, I feel like even little things feel overwhelming. How do I cope better or feel resilient?
Those are like muscles, right? Like I don't have a 6-pack. I never have, but we practice. These are not things that are going to come natural to us, because it takes a lot of time. And all these years out, I still struggle with it. If there's a girl that shows up with a similar story to mine and her outcome isn't the same, my head starts to go, crazy. Or if I go to my annual appointment and it's that time, and these are people I literally work with my oncologist every single day. And I don't think about being a patient until it's my turn for my annual appointment. Then I'm like, here we go again, right? So I think that it's something that is not going to go away, at least not in the clinical setting, but I think with time it gets better. And, you know, there's like, for a period, what I was writing in the morning when I woke up was like 3 intentions that I had for the day. And some of it is just so basic, like eating my lunch away from my desk so that I could just have peace and quiet, right? So if you write 3 small intentions at the end of the day, and at the beginning of the day, and then at the end, just another 3 to just give gratitude for whatever little, for waking up, for breathing, for seeing somebody that you ran into that you haven't seen for a long time. I think those things, like, it puts us in a different mindset. And also I feel like people sort of pick up on who you are, and the same happens in the reverse, right? So who are you around? Are these people that are uplifting, or are these like Debbie Downers, right? So the Debbie Downers are, you know, like when you say things like, oh, I had cancer, oh, I know somebody and then they died. You're like, what? Why would you say something like that, you know? So think about the people that you're around, and try to change your circle if these people are toxic, or even if they're well-intentioned. That's usually the case. Usually people mean well, but they just don't know what to say. But just practicing a little bit of gratitude, and I think one thing that is really beneficial for me, especially being inside so much now that the weather's cold, I don't know where you are, but I think just looking at the trees and the birds, right? And knowing that these things are still around, with all the things that happen, all the bad things in the environment, and yet these things are still resilient and thriving. And so when I do my walks to and from work every day, I look at the trees, I look at the birds, and, you know, I don't do my gratitude I don't do my to-do list in the morning, but I do my gratitude at night. And even as I'm laying my head, or I might just say, thank you, right? I thank you for this, thank you for that. And I don't have to write it. It's like, it doesn't have to be a chore. It's whatever works for you in your lifestyle.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Would you mind stop sharing your screen so I could put up a closing slide, please? Thank you. Let's see. Thank you, everyone, for all of your great questions. And let's see here. That is not where I meant to go. Sorry. I'm sorry. Give me just a second.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to say thank you. Those were really good questions. And
really good questions, yeah.
If I have to write anything in my gratitude, you know, thoughts are on my phone. I feel so grateful for this. So those were really great questions. And it's sort of, you know, when you're doing this for so long, you forget how it is to be in the beginning. And for everyone who asked a question or participated in this event, including Young Survival Coalition, I feel so grateful. Thank you.
Here we go. All right. Thank you so much, Eileen, for taking the time to be our expert speaker today. I would like to thank our sponsors, Lilly Oncology, Celgene, Genentech, Novartis, Amgen, Merck, Eisai, and Pfizer. Thank you to all of you attendees, and I encourage you to head to the Facebook group to continue the conversation. If that's not clear about where that is, I hope you'll look on the virtual symposium page for guidance. And if you're interested in other YSC programs and support, including the 3-day summit, you can certainly go to youngsurvival.org. And with that, I will say good night and thank you again.